Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're tackling talent acquisition.
Oh, yeah, it's a hot topic.
It really is. And to give us some extra insight, we're going to be looking at excerpts from 16 talent acquisition interview questions.
Sounds like a great resource.
It is. So whether you're a recruiter yourself or a candidate getting ready for that next interview, get ready to level up.
Yeah, because like you said, it's a hot topic and it's getting even hotter. I mean, talent acquisition is changing so rapidly.
Okay, so let's start with just the basics. What exactly is talent acquisition?
Right. I think people get it mixed up with just like basic recruiting,
Yeah.
but it's really a lot more strategic.
Okay, so more than just posting a job ad and crossing your fingers.
Exactly. Talent acquisition is about finding the people who are going to drive your business forward. It's about aligning your hiring strategy with the company's overall goals.
So it's about finding the right people for the right roles at the right time.
You got it. It's about making sure that your new hires aren't just filling a seat, but they're actually contributing to the long-term success of the company.
And the source actually highlights this by mentioning that nearly 90% of recruiting professionals are seeing talent acquisition become even more strategic.
Yeah, it's not just about filling a seat anymore.
Okay, so let's say we've got a handle on what talent acquisition is. Now let's talk about the interview process itself. This source has some really interesting sample interview questions and answers. And what I thought was cool was that the advice goes both ways.
Yeah.
They're valuable from both the recruiter's perspective and the candidate's.
Yeah, it's like seeing both sides of the chessboard.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so one question that jumped out at me was, tell me about your favorite resources for finding top talent. And in one of the sample answers, they mentioned platforms like LinkedIn, Indeed, Behance, even GitHub.
Why, yes, the usual suspects.
Right. But what I thought was interesting was that they emphasize using different platforms for different roles.
Well, of course, you got to go where the talent is.
Yeah, so it's not one size fits all.
Exactly. Like if you're looking for a graphic designer, you're probably going to have more luck on Behance where they can showcase their portfolios.
Right.
But if you're trying to find a software developer, GitHub's going to be your best friend.
Right. Makes sense. So it's about being strategic and tailoring your approach.
Absolutely. And this is where building those candidate personas comes in.
Oh, yeah. That's something I've heard a lot about.
You really have to go beyond just looking at skills and experience.
So, think about their personality.
Yes, their motivations, their career aspirations. What kind of company culture are they going to thrive in? What are their goals for the future?
It's like creating a profile of the perfect match, even before you start looking.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. So you're not just fishing in the dark.
Now, another question that caught my eye was about applicant tracking systems.
Oh, yeah. The ATS can't live with them. Can't live without them.
So true. For our listeners who might not be familiar, can you give us a quick rundown of what ATS are and why they matter so much these days?
Sure. An ATS is basically a software platform that companies use to manage the whole recruiting process.
To organize the chaos.
Exactly. It helps streamline everything,
Yeah.
like posting job ads, collecting applications, screening candidates, even scheduling interviews.
So it's like the behind-the-scenes engine of modern recruiting.
Yeah, pretty much. And for recruiters, mastering those systems is crucial. They're dealing with hundreds, sometimes thousands of applications.
Oh, yeah. It can be overwhelming.
It really can. So the ATS helps them manage that volume efficiently.
So what about from the candidate's perspective?
Well, understanding how these systems work can give you a huge advantage.
How so?
Well, tailoring your resume and cover letter to match the keywords and criteria that the ATS is looking for can really increase your chances of getting noticed.
It's like you said, speaking the system's language.
Exactly. Make the robots happy.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about something I know is super important in interviews, behavioral questions.
Oh, those are good ones.
Yeah, and the source really digs into why they're so important. Because they reveal a candidate's attitude, how they approach problem solving, how they've handled different situations in the past.
You know what they say, hire for attitude, train for skill.
Right, exactly. You can teach someone a new software program or a specific process,
Right.
but you can't really teach someone how to have a good work ethic or a positive attitude.
Exactly. So behavioral questions help you uncover those deeper traits and see if they're a good fit for the company's values and culture.
So instead of asking hypothetical questions like, what would you do in this situation?
Right.
You're asking, tell me about a time when you actually faced this kind of challenge. How did you handle it?
Exactly. Because past behavior is often the best predictor of future performance.
And the source even shares this anecdote about a recruiter who lost a fantastic candidate simply because they got bogged down with other tasks and delayed communication.
Oof. I've been there.
Yeah, it's easy to let things slip through the cracks.
It happens, but it's a good reminder that communication is key.
Whether you're a recruiter or a candidate.
Yeah, staying responsive, keeping the lines of communication open, it builds trust and shows you respect the other person's time.
Absolutely. And speaking of communication, there's another story in here about a recruiter who was working with a recruitment agency and kept getting sent candidates that didn't even match the job description.
Ugh, that's so frustrating.
Right. And it turned out to be a simple communication breakdown. The recruiter hadn't clearly communicated the specific requirements and qualifications to the agency.
So they're just throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping something would stick.
Exactly. So, again, clear, concise communication
It's everything.
throughout the entire process.
You got it.
Internal teams, external agencies, the candidates themselves.
Everyone needs to be on the same page.
It saves everyone a lot of headaches in the long run.
You know, speaking of experiences, what about you? I'm curious what's something that's really stood out to you about the interview process. You've been on both sides of the table.
You know, one thing that always strikes me is just how much emphasis is placed on cultural fit.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not just about finding someone with the right skills and experience.
Well, it goes way beyond that.
It's about finding someone who will really mesh well with the company's values, their
Yeah.
work environment.
Right, because, I mean, you can have the most skilled person in the world,
Yeah.
but if they don't thrive in the company's culture, it's going to be a disaster.
It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole.
Exactly.
It just
Not going
I
to
don't
work.
know.
So, yeah, the source really hits on that whole vibe thing.
Okay. But how do you actually evaluate cultural fit during the interview process? It seems so subjective.
It can be tough, but the source gives us some good areas to focus on.
Like what?
Well, think about things like preferred work environment.
Okay. So, like, are they a solo artist or do they thrive in a collaborative setting?
Right, or how do they handle feedback? Are they open to constructive criticism or do they get defensive?
Those are good ones.
And then there's their approach to teamwork. What's their style? And maybe most importantly, how well do their values align with the company's overall mission? So it's almost like you're piecing together a puzzle.
I like that. Seeing if all the pieces fit.
No, I imagine it can be tough to balance skills, experience, and cultural fit when you're actually making a hiring decision.
Oh, for sure.
Like, what if you have someone who's technically brilliant,
Uh-huh.
but they don't quite seem like a cultural match?
Yeah, those are the tough calls. There's no easy answer.
So how do you approach those situations?
I think it comes down to weighing the priorities.
Okay.
Like, is this a role where technical expertise is absolutely crucial, even if it means maybe compromising a bit on cultural fit?
Right.
Or is it a position where teamwork and collaboration are so essential that cultural fit becomes the deciding factor?
I see your point.
It's really a judgment call. And that's why it's so important to get input from multiple people.
So not just the hiring manager.
Right. Get the team involved, maybe even someone from a different department.
So you get a more well-rounded perspective.
Exactly. Avoid those blind spots.
No, one thing that really jumped out at me from the source was the talk about how talent acquisition is evolving.
Oh yeah, things are changing fast.
They mentioned some pretty cool trends. Mobile recruiting, employee advocacy, even the use of AI.
It's a whole new world out there.
It really is. So let's break it down. What's the deal with mobile recruiting?
Well, it's all about recognizing that people are constantly on their phones.
Always connected.
So you gotta make the application process as seamless as possible.
Make it mobile friendly.
Exactly. No more clunky online forms that require you to be sitting at a desktop computer.
Gotcha. Now, what about employee advocacy? I feel like that's become a buzzword lately.
It's a great strategy, though. It's basically about turning your employees into brand ambassadors.
I like that.
So they can share job postings on social media, talk about what it's like to work at the company, even refer people from their own networks.
It's like word of mouth marketing, but for talent.
You got it.
Yeah.
And it can be super effective, especially for those hard-to-fill roles.
People trust recommendations from people they know.
Right? So it's a powerful tool.
Now we can't forget about AI. It's everywhere,
It's changing everything.
including recruiting. So how is AI being used in the hiring process?
Well, it can automate a lot of the tedious tasks.
Like what?
Things like screening resumes, scheduling interviews, even identifying potential candidates from massive data sets.
So it frees up the recruiters to focus on the human element.
Exactly. Building relationships, understanding motivations, all that good stuff.
Because at the end of the day, it's still about people, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Technology can enhance the process, make it more efficient,
Right.
but the human connection is still at the heart of it all.
Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I've got a question for you.
Shoot.
If you could design the perfect talent acquisition process, what would be at the very top of your priority list? Hmm, that's a tough one. There's so much to consider.
Yeah, it's like a recipe with a lot of ingredients.
I guess if I had to pick just one thing, it would be ensuring a truly candidate-centric experience.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I'd want every candidate to feel valued and respected throughout the entire process, whether they end up getting the job or not.
I mean, that makes sense. Why is that so important to you?
Well, like I said, I've been on both sides of the table,
Yeah.
and I know how nerve-wracking the whole interview process can
Oh,
be.
yeah, for sure. It's a lot of pressure.
You're putting yourself out there, sharing your skills and experience, hoping to make a good impression.
It's definitely vulnerable.
Yeah, so to me, it's just crucial to treat every candidate with respect and empathy.
Make them feel seen.
Exactly. Even if they're not the right fit for this particular role, make them feel like their time and effort were valued.
It's all about building that positive employer brand,
Yeah, you want people to walk away with a good impression of the company.
even if they don't get the job.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So where would you point our listeners who are interested in learning more about talent acquisition?
Oh, there's so many great resources out there. Networking is huge.
So, like, connect with talent acquisition professionals.
Yeah. Go to industry events, join online forums. There are tons of articles and books, too.
Read everything you can get your hands on.
Exactly. And remember, this field is constantly changing, so you got to stay curious.
Keep up with the latest trends.
Now, before we wrap up, I have one final thought-provoking question for our listeners.
Okay, hit me with it.
If you could wave a magic wand and design the absolute perfect talent acquisition process, what would your top priority be? What matters most to you when it comes to finding the right people for the right roles?
That's a great question to think about, and we'd love to hear your answers. Share them with us on social media, or just let it simmer in your mind as you continue to explore this crazy world of talent acquisition.
Because at the end of the day, it's all about finding those amazing individuals who are going to help shape the future of work.
And remember, it's not just about filling a position. It's about finding the perfect match, that spark of potential that can lead to amazing things.
That's what it's all about.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the fascinating world of talent acquisition. We'll catch you next time for another insightful exploration.